Guys. Um, Here I am, Andy here. Um, hmm, this apple's really good. So, welcome to episode 1 of Live from Geometryland. Here we are in Geometryland, aka my music studio, which is in my apartment. It's minimalist, does the job. I am really, happy and proud to have what I have here. Um, Hopefully, this all sounds good to you guys. You can hear my voice. You can hear me chewing on this apple. It's really so delicious. Honeycrisp. It's from Natural Grocers. By the way, if you live anywhere near Natural Grocers, for organic produce, quality, selection, and price, they can't be beat. Natural Grocers isn't even sponsoring this message. I just love shopping there and hanging out with the people who work there. It's a good spot. Anyway, I'm here to kind of debrief the internet world and anyone who's listening on what I've been up to past couple years that I haven't really, haven't really made much commotion, haven't really done much, or at least not much visible. Musically, kind of what have I been up to for the past 10 years that Sonic G has been going on this whole time. Um, this is my first time live streaming ever, and I was pretty inspired by um I've been listening to podcasts lately, and I who is this? We got SciTech, sup Josiah. Is it um Josiah Matthews? Yeah. I Josiah's my boy. That was a good night the way that we met. We rode a bus to Sound Tribe. I was just going home to my apartment, but yeah, we had a trippy night that night. So yeah, what's up, Josiah? Um Glad to see you, glad to see you watching. Um but yeah, so I was watching some podcasts or listening to some podcasts because you can't watch them. Watching the beautiful scenery as I like walked through Denver. But I was pretty inspired by a couple that I listened to. One was an episode of the Mr. Bill podcast, which I highly recommend to you if you're into electronic music, music industry, music production. Mr. Bill podcast, you can listen to it on all streaming platforms. Um, so he was interviewing Jesse Breda, who is the founder and CEO of Gravitas Recordings. I think I'm getting that title right. He's like the dude of Gravitas Recordings. Anyway, Jesse Breda was talking about, like Jesse and Mr. Bill got into talking a lot about like promotion and social media. And Mr. Bill said something to the effect of like, well, what would you recommend for the people who have a hard time doing social media and like promoting who just want to make music? And Jesse said, you know, really like what you want to do is, man, you can just focus your energy on making some great music, making some great art. And, you just do that and then let that story unfold. And as that story unfolds, then you can talk about that on social media. And I've always been pretty social media inept. I fortunately, kind of by accident, have a decent YouTube audience. So I'm coming here to sort of share what I've been up to. Another podcast that I want to, mention was I was listening to an interview of Dave Pensato. Anyone who, again, is interested in music production and particularly mix engineering, check out Dave Pensato's YouTube channel, Pensato's Place. Pensato is spelled Pensado. And yeah, he's next level when it comes to mix engineering, but also, I mean, he's got a beautiful life philosophy, and he was talking a lot about this on the interview, and he was saying, the most important thing that you can do as an artist is commit, even if you fail, like, but if you just commit to something, and say, I'm going to do this, rather than saying, I want to do this, I want to try this. No, if you just commit, even if it doesn't work out, then you've committed, you've taken that step, and you've made action, you've made something happen, and you can go from there. So I'm committing to coming here and telling my story. Um, I'm also committing to drinking this tea because I love tea. I used to do a lot of drugs. Now I drink a lot of tea. We're gonna get more into that later. Um, so I've been in a bit of a hiatus these past couple of years, and I feel like I'm always like kind of been on a hiatus. Like I'm on a hiatus here, on a hiatus there. Seems like the flow is like stopping and starting, kind of like I've got the hose and like close the flow, and then and a burst comes out, and it's been sort of sporadic. But especially over the past couple of years, in yeah, amen to the green tea, Josiah. Yeah, in past couple years, I haven't really been doing that much musically. Let's see. Re- Rewind to 2017, I had the first of a series of robberies happen to me. My car got stolen, and I had a bunch of music gear stolen, and that really like threw me for a loop. Um, and kind of, at the time I was also, taking way too much LSD, and had this experience with a lover where we were just falling in love very fast, and then it was like, let's get rid of all our stuff and go to India. Fuck it. Like, what are we gonna do? Um, I kind of had this idea that I was going to solve all my problems by going to the East, and that never happens like that. Your problems always follow you wherever you go. Um, and I had a whole series of, mostly misadventures, series of adventures, in the intervening time. Um, and it's taken me until pretty recently to get back into creativity. But with where I'm at now, I'm, I'm feeling more creative, more connected with music than I ever have in my entire life. So, now I'm going to rewind a lot and kind of be like, how did we get here? And I think that, like many good stories, the place to start is at the very beginning. So I was born in 1989 in Massachusetts, um, to, to a mother and father like everybody else. Um, I feel pretty lucky in terms of the house that I got to grow up in, and like the parents that I had. They're, very progressive people, very loving. I was always taken care of, even if, we weren't rich, but we never, my sister and I never wanted for anything, except, superficial bullshit like some video game or something, whatever. But no, we had a good life. My parents were both in the media field, which had a big impact on me. My dad, when I was young, he was in television and commercials, and then he got into like film, nonfiction, like documentary filmmaking. My mom was in radio, and she was in music radio. She was an on-air host and personality, and she was the one picking the tunes going on the station for a long time. So having parents who were really into music and media for their professions really had a big impact on me growing up. Um, I was required to take music lessons starting when I was 9. I took guitar lessons. Um, when I was a little kid, I remember so many of my toys were like, my dad's like audio visual equipment, and he would have this cabinet that was all organized in the basement, and I would tear through it and just like, make a mess of all his cables and plugging them into different adapters, connecting things. Like, I thought it was so neat. Um, and you would have to tell, like, there had to be certain areas that were off limits and like drawers that I wasn't allowed to go into because I would just like totally wreck all his audio and video stuff. Um, yeah, I got into started taking music lessons. It was age 9. I had my first on-stage performance in front of people. It was exhilarating. Up until that time, I had very poor relationships with my friends in school. Like, I didn't really have a lot of friends. I would mostly get picked on and made fun of. And, getting up on stage, playing music and, playing for my classmates when I, brought my guitar to school, playing in the classroom, it was like the first time that I ever felt this really deep social validation. Um, really felt like I belonged. Um, and over the years in my life, music became for me very much associated with my sense of self. And and I've learned over the years that I'm more than just my music. But for a long time, I strictly believed that I wasn't worth anything without music. Um, and it ended up being sort of a dark driving force behind a lot of things that I had to eventually let go of. When I was 11, I got an electric guitar, learned who Jimi Hendrix was, and then my grades just started to plummet. I didn't care about school anymore. All I wanted to do was play guitar. Started a rock band in high school with my friend Jasper, a drummer who I still work with. I actually just sent off an EP for mastering. It's a haven't picked a label or distribution yet, but it's called In the Dark Wonderland of Dreams, and it's a concept EP, which I'll get into a little bit later. But it features some of Jasper's drums, which is pretty exciting. Um, I had this band. We recorded, a couple albums. I had really gotten into production and all this, at a pretty early age when my mom brought home a recording, little 4-track recorder from the radio station. Getting to, work with my band Moonshine in a studio was a pretty um that was a pretty enriching experience, when we recorded a single and a couple albums. Um then I went to college. Now, I was looking for music schools. I was gonna go to Berklee College of Music, but, went right before my scholarship audition, I injured myself, and I was really discouraged. Like, I was kind of I was really at the top of my jazz game, and I was gonna probably gonna get a full ride at Berklee, but, injured myself, and that didn't work out, and I was really discouraged from trying again, and so I was looking at other schools, and I saw that CU had a good music program, CU Boulder, and I was at first interested in the music program, but when I went to check it out, I realized that their music program wasn't what I was into at all. Um, and that was fine because I remember just a few minutes after leaving the airport when we started the drive on C470 or E470, whatever the toll road is from the airport to Boulder, one of the 470s, just turning the bend and seeing the Front Range, seeing the Rocky Mountains for the first time. I was like, this is where I want to be. The sunshine, the nice weather, it all seemed like this just idealistic dream compared to Massachusetts, which would always be gray in the wintertime and it was depressing. And, I soon realized that the people's attitudes too, were pretty different. You know, really, people were really happy to be in Colorado, whereas I feel like a lot of people weren't happy to be back in Massachusetts. Um, Coming to Colorado exposed me to a lot of things. Um, it exposed me to the whole jam band live electronic scene. It exposed me to the whole psychedelic scene, um and this whole world of music that was very different from Massachusetts. I guess there was some of that back there, but I wasn't fully aware of it. But coming to Colorado and learning about the festival culture and everything that comes with it, rave culture, it was something that I had never really been exposed to. In my freshman year of college, I went to a rave, took ecstasy for the first time. I was blown away by these DJs. I'm like, oh my God, what are they doing? Like, I was way too fucked up to really understand. I just thought it was like super cool. When I found out later that they were just playing tracks that were already mixed and produced, I was kind of like, what? I thought there was more to this. I was a little, you know, at the time, I was a little underwhelmed. I've definitely come to respect DJs for what they do, for the whole vibe they create, and I totally picked up on that um in those first like early rave experiences, and came to realize the true craft of DJing. But it was when I went to Red Rocks for 2 nights of Soundtribe, my first time ever seeing Soundtribe Sector 9. Um, it was it was mind-blowing to see a band performing with electronic stuff, synthesizers, sequencers, and and kind of mixing these sounds of live and electronic. And that was 2008. I've been in Colorado a year. Um, I was pretty impressed, and I remember it was for like a Christmas or a birthday present. My parents were like, "We haven't gotten you a present in a long time. What do you want?" And I was like, "I want a sampler. I want to learn this electronic music thing." I had been doing funk and jazz and all of that and rock and roll, and this whole electronic thing was starting to become just this new frontier that people were really getting into. And I was like, "Man, I want to be a part of this." Um so I started experimenting with that, and I was becoming a real stoner in Colorado. Ended up dropping out of school because I just wanted to play music and smoke weed. And what I started to get to this point where I was like recording my sampler, and then like, what else should this have with it? And I like thought, oh yeah, dude, guitar, live instruments, right? So I picked up my guitar and started playing some riffs along with the stuff I was recording out of my sampler, like the beats and the synth bass and stuff, and a sound was born. Now, when I was 16, when I was still in high school, I can't remember where it was. The name Sonic Geometry, I might have seen it on a Google search, some webs. I feel like I saw it on some web thing somewhere, and it really quickly in my head, like I filed it for later. I was like, oh, that would be a cool name for a music project if I ever did electronic music, which I didn't see myself doing at the time. But then fast forward, 3, 4 years, and here I am in my college apartment, um, recording sampler and guitar together, and I put it together. I'm like, dude, this is sonic geometry. I was pretty I was pretty stoked. I was like, "This is cool." Like, I felt like I had a new and unique sound. I think at the time it was pretty unique. Um, Unfortunately, I didn't really capitalize on it in the way some of my contemporaries and people who came shortly after me, like Sun Squabby, they really made a name for themselves as the live electronic band. But in 2009, I started playing with a wonderful band of musicians. We called ourselves Sonic Geometry. We had a few really killer live shows. There were a lot of things that I was unhappy with about the project. My skills as a producer weren't really there, and my I there were I just felt like that that something wasn't right. Like I had to learn more. I had to learn more about what I was doing. And and that really started my journey of trying to really learn music production. um we had someone who was kind of managing us, and he had been a customer of mine when I was slanging eights and fucking sacks of weed. And he he really kind of he put dollar signs in my eyes. He kind of really put this put the sparkle in my eyes, because he told me, he's like, "Oh man, you're gonna be big. We can make this huge. Like I have the connections." And it was very there were these delusions of grandeur taking hold, and all the drugs that I was doing weren't helping. Definitely weren't helping. Um we we did some good stuff in Colorado, and then in this weird turn of events, like his boss of his film company was like, "We should go to Shreveport. I have work there. Like our film company is not getting any work." And I followed this guy because I was fed the bullshit story that Shreveport, Louisiana was like this cool poppin' place. And like there are cool people there. There's stuff going on there, but it's a very small pocket of super cool people. I mean, don't get me wrong, like I've had great times in that city, played some great shows, but as a young artist trying to come up and spread your wings, it's not necessarily the place where you really want to be developing. There's still a lot of backwards, old school, super southern thinking there. In general in the South, like there are some great places and great people there that I love, including family, but it's just not place for me where I would really feel comfortable living, because of all those sort of things. So I left. I got out of Shreveport and kind of bummed around East Coast back in Massachusetts for a little while. He brought me to Seattle to meet his cousin, and we started growing weed together. He went back to Colorado. I learned the cannabis business and I learned the AV business in Seattle, I think the event business. And then eventually, after a year there, came back to Boulder. And in Boulder, I reconnected with my old electronic music friends. The guy who I went to uh, Louisiana and Seattle with, he was managing my friend's band. He had them all kind of turned against me in a weird way, which is, something it took me a long time to get over. Maybe I'm still not totally over it. Whatever. Um, he anyway, they were doing their thing and I was trying to do my thing. I was playing some little, nothing bar gigs that the style of music that I was playing wasn't necessarily appropriate for. I mean, I was doing a whole lot of kind of experimental, live, chill, glitch. And when you're playing at bars in Boulder, they want to hear bangers. They want to hear like loud music and shit that pumps and that it's good for being drunk. And my music wasn't really for drunk people. It was always kind of for tripping people. If we're gonna assign a substance to the music, um it was at this time, of course, always as I was throughout my entire 20s, just doing lots of drugs. um and this time I was at one of those bar gigs and somebody came up to me, an old friend who I hadn't seen in a few years, who I knew from my first period of time in Boulder. He was like, "Hey man, do you like ketamine?" He says to me after the show. I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I love ketamine." Ketamine was like my favorite drug. I hadn't done it in a few years because I liked it too much. And he's like, "Well, like I have something that's like ketamine, but it's not ketamine." And it was MXE, methoxetamine, 3-MeO-2-oxo PCE, the first big research analog of like the aryl cyclohexylamine family, the ketamine family. It was very popular, so popular that it got banned in all the places that made it. We haven't seen it much in a few years. Um, I I tried this and it was like ketamine, but it was way different. It was this whole thing, and I got super into that drug and started to get really into the research chemical scene. And I didn't have a lot of money, but people were feeding me drugs all the time. And I was my behavior was getting really erratic. Like I didn't have a job, and then I had a job for a few weeks, and I walked out and left, and was kind of having trouble finding work, and got evicted from my house where I was living because we had too many people living there over occupancy, and they found out and they kicked us out. And I was basically crashing on couches, like going into coffee shops to produce music, busking with my acoustic on the street, trying to make a little money. This girl found me and she's like, "Hey, you should move to Maryland with me." And I was like, "Okay." Just it was another step in the pattern of just kind of really erratic and impulsive behavior that I was getting into. Went there for a few months. It was like, this wasn't working. I wasn't making any music. I was, really, really feeling the burn, and came back and was back in Colorado, living in Westminster and then Denver, and was like, again, doing a lot of drugs. Um, Started a Kickstarter campaign to go on tour. Um, Try to take things off, and it did really well. And I kind of made an EP that I gave as a part of the reward for donors. And I did the tour and it was good. Did a lot of drugs on the tour. um and came back, and shortly after I came back, I met a woman who 6 weeks later I married. Again, just kind of erratic, impulsive decision making. Yes, there were drugs involved. um Drugs actually became a huge point of contention in our marriage. Within a few months, we knew it was wrong, but like we were so bullheaded and egotistical that we didn't want to lose face and admit to all the people said that we were making a mistake. So we just gritted our teeth for 3 years and, fought at least half the time. Um, at several points, like there were, it's like I had promised not to do drugs, and then I just like couldn't really help myself, and she was not very nice. Um, Not even, I mean, that's putting it lightly. It was a really difficult relationship. Um, I am really fortunate that I finally got out of it, um, and that I began to heal. Um, I was definitely being like kind of abused and psychologically manipulated. Uh, but that's easy when you're, on drugs all the time. Even, you're just, for me, it was really easy when I was just smoking pot all the time because I would just be like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to think about this situation. Let me just get high. So we divorced 2016, and there I was pretty immediately back on the dark web looking for drugs. I was really looking around for some of that methoxetamine, but as I said, because of the ban, it wasn't around. So I found a really inexpensive source for something that I had also tried in that period of time where I was doing a lot of research chemicals before my marriage. It is a novel PCP analog. I'm not going to say exactly what it is, but you can make the assumption. You can probably figure it out. I became addicted to this drug. I would do it every day. Did it every day until I essentially had a schizophrenic break. The thing is, the way that these drugs work, you know, the more stimulating dissociatives, things that are related to PCP, PCE, they they agonize, they stir up a receptor in your brain that when you hit that receptor, it actually causes your brain to make more dopamine receptors. And the more dopamine receptors you have, the more kind of manic you get. And actually, schizophrenia is associated with having too many dopamine receptors. So I went from being hypomanic to being manic to having a full on kind of schizophrenic episode that left me just like with this wide eyed mania for like a month. And I up and left Colorado. I got in a car and drove and went on this 3-month road trip in California. I quit doing the really hard drugs, but I was still drinking a lot and doing other shit, taking a lot of acid. Um, and through the dark experiences with drugs in Denver and through kind of seeing the light on this, what really felt like a magical road trip through California, I found a lot of inspiration. Even though it was kind of some hard times, the EP in the Dark Wonderland of Dreams really deals a lot with the kind of the darkness and the isolation of of the drug abuse and the subsequent insanity. um the follow up to that is going to be an EP called Finding Geometryland, which sort of deals with the other happier side, the release, a little bit of that hypomania, like yeah, 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 yeah. But that urge to find peace, that search for serenity and the joyous freedom from the prison of drug abuse. Um, so I got back to Colorado. I injured myself again, the same injury that I had prior to my Berklee College of Music scholarship audition. Shoulder dislocation, and I was, I had been working on some tunes on the road, just stuff on my computer. I was ready to record guitar, and then boom, I couldn't play guitar for 2 months, and my arm in a sling. And it was this long recovery, and I basically spent all my money, didn't, that I was gonna live on to, do all this recording. And couldn't work. So, then I was sort of back. I felt like I was back at square one again. All my connections in Colorado had been so disrupted from being just shut off in this marriage for years and then traveling. Like I wasn't connected with my people anymore. And I was pretty depressed, but then I started recording a little bit more, and then Jasper, the drummer who I played with in high school, moved to Colorado for school and for work, and or maybe just for work. I can't. He was working in Boulder basically, and I hit him up. I was like, "Hey, do you want to record some on this EP that I'm trying to make?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And we recorded, and it felt so good. I was like, "Man, do you want to try to do this live?" And my impulsive decision making started taking hold again, and I didn't really set adequate boundaries with myself. I wanted to play music with my buddy. He's super talented. He's really hardworking, and what we were doing together as a live duo, because we started playing live together, it was really good. It wasn't exactly what I really envisioned from the sound, like the same thing that just didn't feel quite right with the well, a lot more felt right now. It's like the he there was definitely like we started to have some kind of push pull with the creative side of things, especially once I got in the studio. I wanted the drums to sound more electronic. He wanted them to sound more live because he's a drummer. He's a great drummer. um I think I ended up taking a lot of the suggestions that he gave me. In some of the songs, I took all of the suggestions that, all the ideas that he had. But I realized that I wasn't really ready to share that creatively yet. I just wasn't there. And then around this same time was when all my stuff got stolen and I went to India. So what I had been building up there, what the momentum that I had going with Sonic G just tanked again. India was a pretty magical experience. Some of it was kind of terrifying. Um, I was there with a lover. Uh, it definitely put a lot of strain on our relationship, but we learned a lot of beautiful things together. We're still very good friends. We're not together anymore. Um, and we came back, and when we came back, it was like we had given away everything, and someone was basically like, "I have this van. Do you want to stay in this van?" Um, and it was like, "Yeah, dude, I'll sleep in this van." But the engine didn't run quite well enough to get out of the Boulder Valleys. And in hindsight, actually, when I like ended up taking it up the hill to sell it a few months later, it seemed to run fine. Like, I mean, it ran hot a few times. It couldn't really like go up the hill for more than half an hour at a time without taking a break. But dude, uh, it I was definitely under the impression that it wasn't going to get out of Boulder. It really had a hard time going up hills. Not all cylinders were firing. So, um, I just kind of hung around in Boulder, and my girlfriend at the time, who was staying with me in the van, she had some family stuff to go deal with in Texas, and she left, and I was just there by myself. I was working, I was getting ready to get my studio going in the van. I was stoked. I was gonna be working on music, and then the van got broken into and somebody stole my laptop. This was pretty depressing because all the music that I had been working on was out, and I was gonna have to save up a lot more money to get a new laptop, and I was already trying to save money for other things and to like try to build out the van. And my stress was beginning to build, but was staying strong, and I was really feeling good about it. I was busking a lot, making good money busking, singing and playing guitar. And then um, there was one day that I was at Ebony Fine Park in Boulder, and a group of hippies, whatever group of kids playing frisbee, befriended me. They offered me LSD again, drugs getting involved. I accepted. It turned out it wasn't LSD. It was one of those research chemicals I had experimented with in my younger days. And lo and behold, they weren't there to be my friends. They knew who I was. They knew that I had been hanging around Boulder in this van, and I was their target. I'm pretty sure that they were the people who stole my laptop. They knew my name, they knew sonic geometry, they knew all this stuff about me that I didn't tell them. And when I was super tripped out, they picked me up by my limbs, all four limbs. You know, person grabbed my hand, another person grabbed my other hand, two people on each ankle, or a person on each ankle. They were basically kind of drawn and quartered me, pulled off my little belt with a pocket on, my pocket that had like $500 cash in there because I'm super paranoid about getting robbed, and I was just getting all crazy in my head, and they threw me into the creek at Ebengee Fine Park. Uh, I was tripping my fucking face off, and they were basically throwing me into the rapids. Um, and I imagine that they were trying to, uh, you know, because I was so fucked up, they were thinking, oh, maybe he'll drown, he'll hit his head or something, and then then he's not our problem anymore, and he won't remember what happened. But I do remember what happened. I got out on the other side. They shook me up a little bit more. Somebody kind of rescued me. I got back to Boulder, filed a police report, never really heard anything about it. Still to this day, I feel traumatized by it. I can't leave my apartment without thinking I'm about to get robbed. Um, but I live with that. You know, People live with PTSD all the time. It's just part of life for some people, for a lot of people. Um, At this point, I was like, I gotta go. I'm gonna go be with my girl in Texas. I just didn't know what else to do. And I went to Texas, and we were having a hard time together, but we were at this cool hostel. We lived there for a few months while we were in Texas that had a music studio. I got really into doing music there. I started to get my setup back together, got a laptop, got a new guitar, all these things that were stolen. Um, I guess I'm gonna backtrack a little bit and talk about my fretless guitar that, so I did a second Kickstarter campaign when all my gear got stolen, when my car got stolen in 2017. And um, I was taking so much LSD at the time that I thought it was this really good idea to get a fretless guitar with all the money instead of, getting my setup going again and getting Sonic G going again. I totally came out of left field and got this instrument that for 2 years, 3 years, like for when I first got it, I was like, it was it was crushing, like how much it just destroyed my ego. I named it the Ego Destroyer. It totally just, it was like crushing. I was like, dude, I don't know how to play this instrument. Like, what am I gonna do with this? Um, in within the past 6 months, I've actually learned a lot about fretless guitar technique, and um, it's been a pretty magical experience opening up to it. I still don't feel like it's something that I'm capable of really bringing out into the live setting in a significant way, but it's been a beautiful journey with that instrument. I for those of you who helped me get that, thank you. It's really provided a um huge inspiration to what I do, and a really wonderful counterpoint to the other instruments that I play. Because when I pick it up, it's like I'm back learning a new instrument, and really, it's a challenge. It really like makes my brain do backflips, and I enjoy that. I enjoy that challenge. Um, but here we are. Let's see, 2018 in Austin, Texas. Get my gear, get a new guitar, get laptop, and I start recording in the studio there, and doing working on like, just kind of making more tunes that I have. They're filed away, cataloged kind of for a few releases down the line. Um, I don't really have it's not all put together yet, so we're just gonna leave that for now. But it was good. Got into the creative thing, played some shows in Austin, or a show in Austin. With the Create Culture crew. They're a great crew of people down there. They have a festival called Co-Creation that they put on. I played at their Create Culture event in like the downtown Austin area. Got to a point with my girlfriend where we were like, let's get out of Texas. She really wasn't feeling it. There was a reason that she left in the first place and moved to Colorado. So we packed up, got in the car, drove, found a place, like, on the way, we found like, while we were driving, figured out our, accommodation situation. I guess it's important to note right before leaving Austin, I had scheduled it maybe, like, a week within a week after getting back from India. I went on a Vipassana retreat, a 10-day silent meditation retreat. Um I was I met so many people in India who had gone on this, and I had been hearing about these retreats for years. I knew about them, knew that they were in the US. Tried to find one in India, but they were all filled up, for the time that we were there. So first thing I did when I got back is I, booked one, and it was at the place in Kaufman, Texas, at the center in Kaufman, Texas, which is widely reputed to be the nicest one. It would be like a really great place to just kind of ease into the silent meditation thing. So I did that. It was really profound. I kind of came out of it though, being like, "This is the answer to everything. Like everyone should do this." I kind of had a a little bit of mania from it. Um, and I got a heavy dose of spiritual materialism, which is when your ego uses spirituality to to grow itself. And so here I was thinking like, yes, I'm so good because I am meditating, and everyone should do this and listen to me. I know so much, blah 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 blah. Which is a dangerous pitfall of spirituality. A lot of people fall into that. And I became very, like, strict and, like, militant about the way that I meditated and how long I did it every day, and it kind of grew into this weird thing, and I eventually hit a wall with it and just sort of stopped. Um, Now, after this meditation retreat, I got clean for 2 months, um, but it was a very, like, white knuckled kinda clean. Like, I was thinking about drugs still all the time. Um, it was kind of clean because I felt like I was pure, like I was somehow above it after, doing this meditation thing. And when I couldn't really, like, you know, isolate myself in my meditation practice anymore, I started using small amounts of cannabis again. I started drinking, I started taking psychedelics, and like pretty soon I was back to the PCP analogs. And that all came to a head. I was back living in Denver in Capitol Hill. Um, I started drinking one night, had a couple drinks. Then a friend who didn't really know the extent of my history of drug abuse decided to, just give me a little cocaine. He gave me some while we were at his house. He was like, "I got some really good cocaine." Then he gave me some to go home with, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to do this." But sure enough, I went home and like cut up a line, and then took a pull from my bottle of vodka, and I was doing that until it was, you know, I was just going through that bag, and then I like went out walking along Colfax with the bottle in a backpack and the baggie in a in my pocket, and I was just drinking and walking and smoking cigarettes and fucking doing what the fuck ever. I blacked out around maybe 8 in the morning, and I woke up in the hospital. Apparently, what had happened was I took the entire stash. I took like 10 doses of my PCP analogs I had, 5 or 10, depending on how you measure the doses. It was a lot. It was a huge amount. And I had done some the night before. So when you do this drug repeatedly, the mania, schizophrenic feelings get more and more intense. That effect of the drug takes a long time to taper off. And the combination of the alcohol and the PCP analog put me into an insane blackout. I was blacked out for a long time. 6, 8, 10 hours. It was somewhere between 6 and 10 hours. I kind of don't really, a lot of it got pretty fuzzy. And I woke up in the hospital. My ex-girlfriend had found me trying to leave our apartment. We were already broken up at the time. But she wasn't gonna be a bitch and call the cops. She found me walking out of my apartment. I was outside. I was naked. It was 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, and she got me to the hospital. Um, got me, just got me in there. She took care of me. She made sure that I was okay. That um, that I was there. I I kind of came to, and she told me that she'd call my mom, and um, I got pretty I got pretty upset when I came out of the blackout. Apparently, I had been pretty good humored before. When I came out, I was like, why is this happening? Why are we doing this? Like da da da. And um, I didn't believe her when she told me I had like taken all my drugs, and then I touched my face and felt how numb I was. I was like, yeah, I've been on dissociatives. Um, came home. Uh, my mom showed up shortly thereafter, and my mom and my ex-girlfriend had an intervention with me, and they were, look, you might think that harm reduction will keep you safe, but if you're behaving like this, if you're just drinking and like doing the coke until it's gone, and then taking all your drugs and walking naked out in the street and ending up in the hospital, like, you don't have control over this, Andy. And I finally realized for the first time that I didn't have control over my situation. I didn't have control over drugs. I didn't have control over my recovery. Um, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't do it on my own. Um, I'm not gonna say that I was powerless, but powerless to do it on my own, yes. But I had the power to find the community and reach deep within myself for my reserves of spirituality that I had learned to access through meditation. And I was able to make the change. Um, Started getting involved with the recovery community, celebrated 6 months clean on July 1st for the month of June. Because I woke up in the hospital on June 4th. And for the month of June, I was Colorado sober. First thing I did when I got home from the hospital was like, man, if I'm quitting drugs, we're buying an ounce of weed. And I got the good shit. It was tasty weed. Smoked that weed till it was gone. And then July 1st, quit that. And I went through a period of a couple months where I was very agitated and like felt like my creativity was totally gone. I was having some horrible issues with insomnia throughout the entire year, even before quitting drugs, but quitting drugs made it worse. And I quit drinking caffeinated beverages, and I was just so depressed. Like, I felt like I was just a shell of my former self. And then I started allowing myself to drink green tea again. And it was around that time I was coming up on 2 months clean, and my creativity started to come back. I started to really want to do music and play music. It took me a long time to get back into the production side of things, but I was working on a track that I'd collaborated with a vocalist on one of her songs, and I decided I was finally going to mix it down because I had promised her that I would do that. And then I finished it, and I was like, well, man, I'm done mixing this track down, but what's next? I have Sonic G tracks to mix down. Let me get some of those. Um, and while I was in Austin, I really got into doing the AV thing. I'm now like, that's my job. I'm a full-time audio visual engineer in the corporate audio world. And it's a great line of work. I make good money. I can take a lot of time off to do music. And in the wintertime it gets slow. So over the past couple of months I've hardly worked. And so I just took the money that I saved up in the busy season, bought some new instruments, invested in my music. Like I was saying before with Dave Pensato, I made the commitment to the music. Um, in these past couple of months, I've gotten 2 EPs mixed down. Just sent the first one off for mastering. I am pretty proud to say that I will have Torin Goodnight of Birds of Paradise mastering my new EP. If you haven't heard of Birds of Paradise, which is a duo that he had with Tyler Gibson, you should check them out. They're some of my favorite electronic music that's been made like in the past decade. Um, Also, check out Torin Goodnight's solo project, Bird of Prey. A little different style, but it still has the same razor sharp, 10 out of 10 high end production quality. If you like good electronic music, Torin Goodnight makes good electronic music. I was trying to look up to see what he'd done in the past few years, and I found out he had a mastering business. I'm like, man, I listen to his music when I'm trying to master my own stuff. If I want this stuff done right, why don't I have the guy do it who's like who I try to model it after? So that's pretty cool. Pretty stoked that I'm going to be working with him on that. He's a super nice guy. You can check out his website, ascendedmastering.com, if you're an electronic musician in need of mastering services. Um, haven't really heard the finished products yet, but so far working with him has been a real pleasure. And I guess that kind of brings us up to present day. Um, kind of, have, I guess, now some more of the backstory on sonic geometry, and what have I been doing? Where has my creativity been taking me? Um, you know, yeah. So now, what am I up to? I've been redesigning my live set. I have been, working on these EPs in the studio. I have a couple more that are working their way down the pipeline. Um, Starting to look into, playing some live shows again this year and getting back into that. It's something that I miss doing. I really miss being a part of the music community, and now that I started to open back up and reconnect with the music community, realizing how much support and how many friends that I have there. That was something really hard to get into, when with the insomnia, because all I ever wanted to do was sleep. And I want to go out, didn't want to go to shows. And when I was newly clean, it was also really hard to go around and be around the music scene, because I was like, dude, this is, there's so much drug and alcohol use in the music scene. It's hard to escape. Um, but I've been feeling really good, feeling really confident in the music and in the and just in life. And I'm really excited for things to come. Um, yeah, sonic geometry. What is sonic geometry? Sonic geometry. I told you about why I named the project that. It just sort of came to me. But through having a musical project called Sonic Geometry, I started to wonder, like, what is this really? There's, that I came up with the name before, or I found the name before this whole like sacred geometry kind of new wave spirituality and like psychedelic culture, all this stuff really came to be what it is now. But a lot of people talk about, Fibonacci sequence in music, or 432 and all this stuff. And there's actually a lot of complete BS out there regarding sonic geometry. Especially if you look around YouTube, you'll find some real like fake science about sonic geometry. I for a while got into studying just intonation and natural temperament tunings, which are, older tuning systems, very different than what we have today, uh, that are based on simple ratios of notes, and so that the harmonic ratios of frequencies line up. So if you picture the waves, they make these nice, you know 5/3 or 3/5, or like some and those, that's a really consonant interval. But there's a lot of if you look at equal temperament, which is our standard 12 tone tuning that we use today, like all the notes are a little bit out of tune and just intonation. And natural temperament are a bit, the frequencies line up better, the intervals are more consonant. But really, like, what I came out of this whole thing is, even in 12 tone equal temperament, there is a geometric relationship between the notes, between the rhythms. Really, sonic geometry is a fancy way of saying music, because music is a structured um, arrangement of sounds made to be pleasing or somehow emotionally evocative, or create some kind of feeling within the listener. It's really up to the creator to decide how those sounds are structured. um, it's up to the creator to decide what impact they have. It's up to the listener to decide what impact they actually do have. um, but really, when you look at any system of music, that like, any system of, tones and rhythms, scales. It's all geometrically related to each other. So sonic geometry, again, is, man, it's just music. And that's what I'm here to make, music. A lot of stuff make might fit into the electronic realm. Some people might call it glitch or bass, but it's really neither of those things. I mean, I step outside that box all the time. Really, like, I can put this music that I make within the boundaries of just that word. It's music. You can call it whatever you like, whatever helps you categorize it better and know what it is. But man, I really, underneath all of this, I'm just a dude who likes music, and I always have been for as long as I can remember. From playing the piano that was in my house as a little kid, some of my earliest and best memories. And so that's what I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna play music, and I'm gonna do it for the love. If it turns out to be a career, then awesome. But I'm not so attached to that as I used to be. Don't quite have those stars and dollar signs in my eyes anymore, but the excitement and the passion and the fire that I have is burning a lot deeper than just some sparkly, whimsical shit. And I'm really excited to share more with you, and to share more music with you, and to keep you all tuned in on this journey. Yeah, thanks for the support, YouTube. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna throw my Spotify, um what's it called, my Spotify artist link in the description here, so that you can check it out. Check me out on Spotify. I recently rebooted my Instagram account, so go follow me on Instagram, and please actually follow me on Spotify. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Those two things specifically will really help me out right now. Yeah, and until the next episode, peace out from Geometry Land. Have a good night.